often asked is, how does yoga vary or differ from religion? Or does it in fact differ? Because both seem to have lots of rules and regulations. Lots seem to have certain rituals and things which, well, certainly common to many religions and certainly to many styles of yoga. So what is the background? What is the difference? How do they vary? Let me say first and foremost that yoga is not a religion, but it is the basis for all religions. Now that might sound to be a fairly major statement. Let's come back to the origins and say, okay, the word yoga, an old Sanskrit word, which is a very, very ancient language, no longer spoken, but it's the root word for our word yoke, which means to bring together. And what it's talking about is bringing together matter and spirit, or if you like, the person with the creative energy which brought them into being. The whole process of all of the things that we call yoga originated out of that journey to find our way back to spirit. Now, if you remember some of the earlier talks we've had, we talked about this YouTube, this personal YouTube, and we talked about spirit coming down into matter in order to experience. Remember the journey down here from spirit down into matter to experience, to gain in wisdom as we evolve back to spirit. Well, yoga is on about this journey. The yoga we're talking about is the journey from matter back to unite with spirit. Because one of the interesting things is that when we leave our home in spirit, when we come into matter, we sort of forget where we came from. We have that feeling that we came here for something, we're not quite sure what. I'm sure you've all experienced that feeling occasionally. There's got to be more than this. Or a little feeling that like there's something over here but you can't quite catch it. That there's a deeply meaningful something somewhere but can't quite get it, can't quite find it. Okay, that's the echo, that's it. Our spiritual beingness echoing down here in our physicality, reminding us to come home occasionally. And so what we call yoga, which commonly is seen as our physical exercises or our meditation practices, or the wearing of orange robes or swamis or whatever, has slightly been skewed into the idea that that is yoga, when in reality what we commonly call yoga are all of the practices, are all of the understandings, are all of the awarenesses which lead us to yoga or union. In other words, all of those physical postures, and you see some of them here on the side of the chart, these are the ones we use at Gita frequently, that all of these physical postures are ways of working on these various levels of our being in our personality. Remember, those lower 5 centres deal with our personality, in order for us to return to spirit in consciousness. Ultimately, we'll do it when we leave behind our physicality, but we don't have to wait till we're dead to return to spirit. We can actually reunite with spirit in our quiet time, in our meditation time, if you like, in our prayer time. That is the union. That is what yoga really is. Coming back to really be part of your own beingness. Unity with spirit. Now, all of these physical postures and all of the strange practices have evolved down through the centuries so that people could find their spirit once again. But remember, so many of them are culture-bound. So many of them are time-bound. So many of them are stuck in a particular way of thinking or being that was prevalent hundreds or maybe even thousands of years beyond our current time. Spirit itself is never static. It's always evolving, always becoming more and more conscious. So our practices to help us return to yoga or union need also to evolve, to keep pace with the times and the state of bodies and minds that we have now. There were some very serious rules and regulations very early on in humanity. If you watch the little clip about the Atlantean period, you may remember that down at the very bottom of the big U-tube, Atlantis was that world which was very gross, which was very corrupt in the end, and certainly not a healthy way to find spirit. So some very strong rules evolved out of that time about things we should eat, things we should do, things we should say, things we should avoid, all to help us get rid of that heavy influence so that we could return to spirit once again. But we're not back in Atlantean times now, we're a lot further on up the U-tube. So some of those rules also change with the times. So when we talk about yoga as a religion, no, it's not. Yoga is a way of life. Ultimately, you could say yoga is returning to spirit, finding unity with that essential essence of your being from which you came back in an energetic state in order to experience here in this world. That whole energetic state literally wants to magnetize our consciousness back to that spiritual state, because that's what we really are. Remember, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So all of the practices that we use are all there to help us return to that spiritual state. In other words, to raise our consciousness, to lift our awareness back to the spiritual state. So as we go through all of our yoga postures here at Gita, and you'll probably recognise many of these as the very classical yoga postures, we do this one to work on our suprarenal glands, the glands that give us the drive and the determination. If they're out of balance, they make us very aggro and angry. We work on this one here, the one that's folded flat, to work on our creative or our recreative glands. They're the ones that help us maintain our physical body. This one working on our will to satisfy or our emotions. This one opening the heart. This one here working on the throat centre, which helps to keep our brains really functioning properly. This one to work on our sixth sense or our higher consciousness, our intuition. And the headstand to really work on the pituitary gland, which is the highest gland functioning in our physical body. So is yoga a religion? No, it's a way of getting back to spirit. It's quite different to what people often think, and perhaps we can talk more about the various styles of yoga at some future date, because it's a very interesting process. Thank you.